I want you to imagine your workday for a second. You sit down at your desk, you open your computer, and for the next 8 hours, you are forced to watch a non-stop stream of the most disturbing content you can possibly imagine.
See, your job is to be the human filter for a massive social media company. You're the one standing between the general public and the absolute worst of humanity. All the stuff we hope we never, ever have to see. But that, well, someone has to.
And it just keeps coming. One video after another, after another. You have maybe a few seconds to decide if it violates the rules, and then boom, you're on to the next one. The trauma is relentless, the images are inescapable, and you know they're going to stay with you long after you log off.
And for putting yourself through that psychological grinder, that's what you get, $1.50 an hour. Now, this isn't some crazy hypothetical. This is the reality for the people who clean up our social media feeds.
This was the actual life of Daniel Matong and 184 of his colleagues in Nairobi, Kenya. They were employed by a company called Sama, which was a contractor hired by Meta, the parent company of Facebook, to moderate content for all of sub-Saharan Africa.
And the job? It was way more than just watching horrible videos. These workers were handling moderation in over a dozen different African languages. That's a really specialized skill. And yet the psychological support they got? It was practically non-existent. So it's no surprise that PTSD symptoms became widespread. And when they tried to unionize to get better conditions, they were fired.
So, how does a situation like this even happen? Well, it all starts with the location, Nairobi. You see, the Kenyan government has been pushing really hard to market the country as Africa's Silicon Savannah, this perfect hub for outsourcing with a big, educated, English-speaking workforce.
This whole industry is built on something called business process outsourcing, or BPO. It's basically a system where these huge tech giants hire a third-party company to do the dirty work they don't want to do themselves. In this story, Meta hired Sama. And here's the kicker. Sama actually marketed itself as an ethical outsourcing company. But what this model really creates is a layer of legal distance, right? A buffer between the giant corporation and the people doing the work. This is the contractor shield.
And the difference that shield makes is just stark. If you're a direct Meta employee in, say, California or Dublin, you get great on-site mental health support. But for the contract workers in Nairobi doing the exact same traumatic job, the support was totally inadequate. Their calls for help were pretty much ignored.
So naturally, when the workers decided to sue, this was Meta's core defense. They basically said, hey, we hired Sama, a contractor. We don't have a formal office or direct employees there, so we have zero legal responsibility in Kenya. It's a classic move from the big tech playbook. You get all the profit from the labor, but you deny any of the responsibility. But Daniel Matong and his colleagues, they weren't having it. They filed a landmark lawsuit, and it wasn't just for being fired unfairly. They alleged human rights violations, arguing they were lied to during recruitment and forced to work in conditions that amounted to forced labor.
And the stakes here were absolutely massive. They were seeking $1.6 billion in compensation. This sent a huge shockwave through the entire outsourcing world. It was basically the first time Facebook had been challenged like this anywhere outside of the US. The very first fight was just about jurisdiction. Could a Kenyan court even hear the case? Well, after a big Time magazine investigation blew the lid off this story, the workers scored a huge victory. In June 2023, the Kenyan High Court said, yes, Meta can be sued here. Meta appealed, of course, but in March of 2024, the Court of Appeal agreed. The trial could finally go forward.
And this, right here, was the turning point. The Kenyan courts essentially broke through that contractor shield. The judge's logic was really simple but powerful. Look, Meta supervised the work, they designed the software, they set the rules, so they're responsible. This set an incredible precedent.
So, the workers had won. The case was finally going to trial. It felt like this huge step towards real accountability. And then, something just unbelievable happened. It was like the rules of the game got completely rewritten while it was still being played.
So check out this timeline. In March, the very same month Meta lost their final appeal, their top global affairs exec met with Kenya's president. By November, a new bill just pops up out of nowhere. A month later, the president is publicly promising to protect these BPO companies. And just a week after that, it was signed into law. The speed was just breathtaking.
And this is the smoking gun.
At a public event, Kenya's President William Ruto looks directly at a Samara representative and says this. He didn't even try to be subtle. He just openly admitted to changing the law specifically to protect these companies from lawsuits, arguing it was a necessary evil to keep jobs in the country.
And just look at how they did it. The actual workers this law impacts, they were completely shut out of the process. Their requests to speak were ignored. Their detailed proposals were just tossed aside. The whole bill was railroaded through in a way that critics say completely violated the public participation rules in Kenya's own constitution.
So what does all this really mean? Well, it gets to this fundamental conflict that's playing out not just in Kenya, but all across the global south, where this kind of digital work gets outsourced. It's this high-stakes battle between attracting foreign jobs and protecting basic human rights. I mean, here's the choice, laid bare. On one hand, the Kenyan government wants to pitch itself as business-friendly to get that foreign investment. But the reality for the workers shows you the hidden price of that pitch. A system where foreign companies rake in profits, while local citizens are left with the trauma and no way to get justice.
And here's the biggest irony of all. This new law, it takes Meta's exact contractor shield defense, the one that lost in court not once but twice, and it literally writes it into the law of the land. The courts rejected their argument, so the government just went and changed the law to make their argument legal.
But this fight is not over yet. There are still two major legal battles happening. First, the workers' lawyers argue their original case is about constitutional human rights, and you can't just wipe those away with a new employment law. And second, there's a whole other petition to get this new law thrown out for being unconstitutional in the first place.
And that's exactly why this story matters so much, far beyond the borders of Kenya. Meta, Google, TikTok, they all use this exact same contractor model to shield themselves from responsibility all over the world. If the Kenyan workers ultimately win, it creates a powerful playbook for workers everywhere. But if this new law stands, it creates a playbook for governments to help corporations legislate that responsibility away.
Which really leaves us with one big question. We all get to enjoy a cleaner, safer experience online. But this story forces us to confront who is really paying the price for it, psychologically, financially, and legally. It's a hidden cost, and it's being paid by people like Daniel Matong, the ghost workers of our digital age.